Life is already in the finals, and only one more match before we reach the last Heart of the Swarm professional match we will see. This is an exciting time, ladies and gentlemen. And this next one, what is it about the generic Green Wings that they keep just getting into these team kills? But in another way, if you look at it, that means at least one generic member will be in the finals. Who will it be? Will it be the first player I'm about to introduce? A true underdog story here at the WCS Global Finals. This man finally breaking through to the round of 4 in a premier tournament. Will he be able to take down his fellow superstar teammate? Welcome with me, Ro4! And his opponent. There's a reason this player is on the tail wing of every Genair plane. Welcome to the stage. It is sOs! Will sOs go up to challenge life for that second title, or is Rogue trying to make history for himself and the Generic Green Wings? Let's find out in the semifinal number 2.
sOs seems to be the guy that in these situations is more unfazed and is okay. And
He's got a lot of self-belief and self-confidence, I guess is the best way to look at it when he chooses the strategies. I think the way that he's going to approach this series, despite showing a lot of his tricks already last week, is going to be superior to what Rain can deal with.
sOs is being pushed back into the corner, but it looks like his warpage will be enough to take this fight.
Brilliant positioning there by sOs.
sOs as well, because it seems that guts and taking risks is what's going to get you to the final.
Even with the DT getting the assists in here, the Stalkers look up, they grab one of the Colossi, they grab the second Colossi, there's one left, but the army's gone! GG! sOs takes the 3-0 in a fantastic turnaround.
And sOs does it. He goes to the semifinals. The $100,000 man signing right here on stage.
Nobody's so hipster, not even Dario, not Kevin, and certainly not me, because I picked safe, was saying, you know what, BlizzCon, watch out for Rogue.
He knows that Hydra really can't run by at this point. He needs to devote all of his resources to staying alive in this game. Is Rogue going to break his round of 8 curse here? The sky is all his. He can do whatever he wants.
Gets the spawning pool, so he can't make any units. You know, there's so many things. Look how many roaches
And he has more roaches at him. Hydra, GG. Rogue has done it. He's made it to the round of 4 for the first time.
Rogue moves on to the semifinal, and as our commentator said, finally breaks that curse of getting blocked in the round of 8 at Premier Tournaments.
It is the underdog versus the former champion, sOs versus Rogue, a team versus team match. And let's be honest, sOs is the player to beat here. Everyone's expecting sOs to take this win. But Maynard, what do you think Rogue would have to do to take down a player like sOs?
Well, we talked about him last time we were talking about Rogue earlier on when the start of the broadcast. Preparation. Like he has a lot of sOs to look at. He's on the same team, so he has that going for him as well. But I mean, that's just going to have to be it. It's experience playing sOs and knowing what to do against him, because sOs's mechanics, his executions, timings are all crisp. There's a reason he's champion.
Yeah, I like how you just said preparation, then you paused and thought,
and like,
is there any other
that's
edge?
It.
No, that's it. That Rogue might have.
Literally need to know how to beat him, and that's how you beat him.
Now, Dario, you're an expert on being the underdog story.
And he's so creative, too.
So creative. Dario,
Yeah.
when you're up against someone who everyone's convinced is going to beat you,
Which in your case is like
the Archon match yesterday.
Yeah. Well, nobody.
no, be gentle to him.
Yeah.
Dario.
You're breaking my heart, Chef.
You single me out of this? What?
We all know you're the ringleader when it comes to beating
you're right,
down
you're
on
right,
people.
you're right.
Sean is just following in your footsteps. He doesn't know what he's
I'm
doing.
just the host, no responsibility here. Okay, Dario, when you're in that situation where you're up against a player who's supposed to beat you, you earlier on said you think that that's actually a more comfortable position to be in.
Well, technically, yes, but...
Do you disagree with yourself with the pass?
It's important to be able to change your mind, no, but the specific case against SOS, I'm not sure if I would feel comfortable with that, because throughout the tournament, I just have seen nothing, just no flaw in his play that you can exploit. And I feel the most important thing for Rogue will be not to fall into that trap that he has to play something super weird to be able to win, because then you can just lose very silly 0-3 very quickly. You still need to have that base skill that you execute to beat SOS. So he's probably going to try to do something tricky, but in the end, I think against SOS, only really good execution can save you. I don't think he's going to lose against something and can't do anything about it. He's not just going to see a build order and then lose.
So you do not recommend a Thor drop-like build right now? What you're saying?
Let me think about that. No, I don't think so.
Okay. That's pretty quick.
Here we're taking a look at Rogue on screen, and of course, he is not really not one of the more known players at the event because he consistently got to the round of 8, which is an incredible feat in the Korean leagues, but never made it past that until today, and obviously the 3-1 against Hydra yesterday, but in particular, the absolute humiliation of Maru 3-0 looked to be the dominating player in that matchup.
He gave himself a nickname, Sean.
Sexy boy.
Sexy boy. What do you think that says about him?
Well, I mean, honestly, it's that Rogue has a lot of eagerness to step onto the scene. I mean, you don't dedicate that much time in the Korean leagues with that level of consistency and continue to push yourself forward without having gotten the limelight. I really feel like it's...
Is this Sexy Boy's time to shine?
Yes! I'm really eager to see Rogue play in this matchup because honestly, against SOS and against Protoss in particular, I would... Actually, Dario, correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like it's the hardest matchup to pull some cutesy timings in. I feel like the Baneling bust against Terran, or obviously early Ling Baneling against Zerg is common, but against Protoss, I mean, force fields, mothership cores are just so strong.
Yeah, unless you're live and can somehow make the other player make so many mistakes because you're so intimidating. And against live, you kind of know it's coming and then just lose anyway. But he seems to be the only Zerg player in the world who can really do that against Protoss, because you have so many safety nets. You have wall-ins with high hit point buildings, you have mothership cores, you have force fields. And it's gonna be really tough. Like, my bet is still on the money toss.
We have only seen PvP from SOS, and that has been kind of one of his money matchups in the past. So I'm really interested to see Rogue, who's shown lightning in a bottle type play. Like, he has actually only dropped 1 game in 2 best-of-5s, versus someone who's had a little bit of a tougher time, but only against Protoss in SOS. But it's also, keep in mind, SOS always wins $100,000 tournaments, and first place is $100,000, which is, as they say, life-changing money. Although not for SOS, because he just keeps coming back and winning them, and he seems to be wearing the same clothes.
Map 1 is, of course, going to be Bridgehead. In my opinion, my favorite map in the map pool, due to the choice of where to first expand. There's a little bit of optionality for some of the Zerg players, as we saw out of Life in the last series, but in particular, the backdoor rocks that allow for a lot of interesting rotations.
Yeah, if there's any map that Rogue is probably at least feeling semi-comfortable on, it's going to be Bridgehead.
You think so? Was Iron Fortress vetoed out or anything like that? I feel like that's a really
Cactus Valley was vetoed out, as was Dash and Terminal, which is to be expected. We might only see that in the grand final.
Yeah. Well, no, Hydra had it in that ZVZ, and then he did...
That's right,
he did like a... I think that was the map he 10-pooled. In the map where
Baneling, yeah.
Overlord's like, oh, okay, easy peasy. But anyways, I have to agree with you. Bridgehead's one of the more fun maps because of that dynamic with the expansions, but also I really like the back rocks in this matchup in particular, because we even saw that with the Life matchup, where you have to have your mind on it, and so much so, you would even dedicate a whole mothership core just to making sure you don't get those back rocks knocked down. So it really kind of makes you make some choices.
It's an interesting map where Rogue could have the opportunity to pull off a nice win. Game 1 will set the tone for the series, and Game 1 is getting ready to kick off right now.
Thank you very much, guys. Well met, BlizzCon. I hope you guys have had a phenomenal weekend so far. Roddy, it's time to kick off semifinal number 2.
Yep, it's time to find out if we are going to have our dream final. The world champion of 2013 against the world champion of 2014. It's still possible, Nate. Almost too cheesy for Hollywood, I'd say.
Yeah, but man, the story is so cool. SOS is one of the most terrifying guys only in tournaments that have $100,000 on the line. You know, he's good overall, but it's really here where he's come and made a name for himself. There's a reason why people call him $, $O$. And Rogue, he's got a long way to go if he wants to fulfill that underdog story.
Absolutely. SOS just peaks at the right times. Hasn't won a whole lot of tournaments in his career, but if you take a look at the earnings list, you know, how high he's up there. He's up pretty damn high, higher than some players that have won 8, 9, 10 tournaments, even though he's only won 3 or 4. But he just wins the one that matters. And, you know, which one is truly more important than the last one ever in Heart of the Swarm?
Very good question, Roddy. As you guys can see, we are loaded in to semifinal number 2 on Bridgehead. On the right side of the map, give it up for Generic Queen Rings, Rogue!
And on the left side of Bridgehead, we're looking at the main base of our Red Protoss player, the world champion of 2013. Give it up for SOS.
True money man, if there ever was one in StarCraft 2 Rotterdam. I'm very excited to see if he busts out the money gates, but perhaps Rogue is going to go for the money hatch. We've seen this mad build before.
We've seen this build in the first few weeks that Bridgehead got introduced to the ladder map, where us Protoss players, the whiners that we are, we said impossible to stop. But then we realized, like, wait a minute, it's actually not impossible. If you just scout it, there are multiple ways.
If you just, you know, prepare, try to figure it out, plan around different things, there are ways to handle it. SOS this game looks like he wants to go with a Nexus first, a very greedy play. Kev, tell me, does this make it that much more difficult for him to defend whatever push comes from this hatchery?
It's very difficult, but I think you can still stop it if you just get your forge on time. Like, SOS is scouting around right now that he didn't find a hatchery in the back of the main base. That's kind of weird. That he doesn't see here, that's becoming very weird. Now he's gonna go to the top, because some Zerg players, they like to take the hatchery in the right top side of the map. And now SOS is like, all right, I know what's going on. You're most likely on the right side of my rocks. So now I'm very curious, is that a forge?
Okay, yes, it is a forge. He's gonna use it to block off part of that front ramp. Of course, those back rocks are where the area gets vulnerable. 2 drones are being sent out. The spawning pool is going to finish at a time where Rogue will be able to start 2 spine crawlers. Those will bash those rocks down very quickly, and with the gas that he's mining, he can follow it up with a very fast Zergling speed push.
Yep, and that is going to be the idea. Knock down these rocks and just run by with as many Zerglings as possible. Sometimes they throw in Banelings in the mix as well, because a couple Protoss players, they build a lot of cannons, and that's great, don't get me wrong. But if all cannons are next to each other, well, then 3-4 Banelings can take care of it. So I'm very curious to see how SOS is going to go about defending this. He's making 1 Zealot, which I'm actually a little bit surprised by, because I don't think you need a Zealot right now. I would focus on getting cannons near my rocks. He canceled the Nexus, by the way.
Yeah, very interesting response here we're seeing from SOS. His front wall has that small gap for the workers to move in and out of, so perhaps the Zealot is to block that off. But what does he do about the creep spread that's going to come? You know, the spine crawlers will eventually start pushing through. He'll take over the natural, spread creep everywhere. SOS needs a game plan to get rid of these forces.
I'm a little bit shocked. He's going to get a cannon, but it's going to go in his main mineral line. But the thing is, if I'm Rogue right now, I will just spread some creep, and eventually I'm going to macro up behind this. Of course, you're on 1 base, but it's very difficult for a 1 base Protoss to attack the Zerg eventually. So I do not feel that SOS can win this game on multiple bases if he doesn't clean up whatever is going on the north side of his main base right now. Unless he wants to win on 1 base, but we saw that with Lilbao against Live. It's very difficult to run across the map if you only have, you know, a pylon, a probe, and there are speedlings running around.
Yeah, we talked about the madness of a matchup like this can bring. Fun to see it start off from a player like Rogue instead of SOS.
Yeah.
Very important to note that probe, of course, being picked off means any type of counter harass not going to be an option now.
Massive pickoff. That probe in the right top side, that could have been a probe that warp in a pylon, which would allow SOS to actually successfully 3 or 4 gate. The fact that he shot this down, and there we see SOS is going to try it again, because he realizes if I want to win this game on 1 base, I need to sneak a probe to the other side of the map. Otherwise, this probe is going to get picked off over and over again, and I can never actually commit to my attack.
Now we see SOS is first person. He's trying to set up that wall to help make it more difficult for those Zerglings to run by and push. He sees the spine crawlers coming, but like you said, Kev, that probe is making its way across the field.
Yep, that probe is actually the MVP right now. If I'm Rogue and I see the amount of cannons over here, he's gonna see what's happening over here in the front. And there's only one Zealot.
That Zealot in the wall, very weak. There's the force field to block those Lings away, but it's only a matter of time before they come back.
But if I'm SOS right, or excuse me, if I'm Rogue right now, I'd say let's just let it go. You know, I have him contained on one base for now. I got a crazy amount of Lings. Let's just make sure that I don't die, and let's just expand, because I actually have all the freedom in the world to expand, while well, it's going to be very difficult for him to expand.
Yeah, very tense moment here. That Zergling speed is ready. Warp Gate's about to complete, but SOS, he's stuck in on one base. The Spine Crawlers are trying to move forward. Here come the Lings. The Sentries need to step away. There's the first few force fields. One of the Sentries does get caught at the bottom side. Photon Overcharge is activated as well. The Zealots are dead, and the Spine Crawlers have rooted themselves. First Photon Cannon will fall. Second Photon Cannon out of shields. The Zerglings, however, have been cleaned up.
Yeah, I think there is just way too much firepower here for SOS. If I'm a Rogue, I would just stop this. Like, you got so much creep over here, and I would just transition out of this. He's down 9 workers, though. He lost a lot of Zerglings there. With Photon Overcharge and 4 and 5 cannons, that is almost unbreakable.
Yeah, a lot of larvae, a lot of resources thrown into that meat grinder by Rogue. And force field there grabs a queen, possibly a second one. A phenomenal pickoff as this solidifies SOS's defensive posture.
And by now, SOS can start thinking about attacking, and that's why he's warping in his first pylon on the right side of the map. He has to be very careful, because if he warps in 4 units and they get spotted, they will get surrounded, they will get picked off. He's gonna warp in the Twilight Council as well. And guys, if you love Dark Shrines, SOS is your Protoss to go.
Yeah, man, the Dark Templar play we have seen, even in that PvP series yesterday against Rain, was some of the most gnarly stuff we've ever seen. This probe's going to show itself, and now Rogue knows, hey, wait, you probably have a pylon out of the map now. Why would he do that, Ken?
I have no idea why he did that, Nate. I guess he really wants to see if Rogue has an expand in the back of his natural, so he will get that confirmation. But you are spot on. That probe is a huge tell. No Protoss in his right mind would send a probe to the other side of the map when he's on one base and not at least warp in a pylon.
Yeah, so now it's Landon he's have to keep his eyes open for. He sees that a hatchery is just now starting in that natural. There's the Dark Shrine that you mentioned, Roddy, and he has a pylon actually going down in the mineral line area of that natural. He doesn't seem to be aware of it.
Nope. I'm actually a little bit surprised that Rogue is keeping all his Zerglings on the left side of the map. 3 Zealots, I'm not sure if that's enough, but if he warps in 1 or 2 more, he's definitely going to be able to get a cancel on that hatchery. This Oracle is probably going to scare the hell out of Rogue, and he might make a panic Spore Crawler and then cancel it, and then later on realize that he does really need a Spore Crawler, because let's not forget, he is still on hatchery tech. There is no layer for Rogue, and no layer means no Overseers.
That's right. This Oracle moves in as bait, as you said, Kev, but no Spore Crawler finds the pylon out here, and the scary thing is, seeing this pylon could bait him into moving all of his Zerglings over there. The 6 Zealots are making their way to the main mineral line. If they can get themselves covering each other's backs into a choke point, those Lings will never break the position.
Yeah, and that's not the only thing. These Zealots will buy time. The moment the Lings are fighting these Zealots, that pylon survives in the right bottom side.
The Dark Shrine's almost done.
Oh, the Lings are going for it.
They're going to see the pylon. These 2 Zealots, shoulder to shoulder against it, are trying to hold that position.
Here we go.
The DTs, 2 are on the way. There's nothing here that can see these Dark Templar. They start to hack and slash away as these Zerglings. The lair begins. Where's the Spore Crawler, Rogue?
It's going to be so hard to get a Spore Crawler up. These 2 Dark Templars running into the main pay. He didn't even start it yet, Nate. It's just now starting. He needs to keep this Spore Crawler alive. Otherwise, this game is 100% over.
These DTs are on a safari hunt, cutting down Zerglings on their way to that Spore Crawler, Kevin. If they kill it, it's over. GG. SOS takes game number 1.
SOS, the good old Dark Shrine, he does it again. Very interesting to see how he dealt with that hatchery that was going down near his rocks, but he didn't sweat it. He's like, all right, you're on one base, I'm gonna stay on one base for a while, and he made it work.
Just phenomenal decision-making in the face of grave danger, as you said. Many Protoss at the beginning of this season where Bridgehead was brought into play. We see here in our Windows 10 game DVR, that hatchery has been the bane of many Protoss' existence on this ladder pool.
Yep, there are many ways to deal with it. I haven't really seen people deal with it the way that SOS did here, but he just said, I can maybe hold it near the rocks, but it's going to be very tricky, it's going to be hard. Let's just defend my main base. And I think Rogue made a big mistake here. I think he sacrificed so many units. Look at the amount of DPS in all these cannons, Photon Overcharge, the sentries, the Mothership Core. I don't think this is a fight that Rogue should have taken.
Yeah, he committed so many forces here and barely gets the sentries, but even then it was also about buying time. And even with that one base economy, you're not going to be able to build that many Zerglings anyway. It's not like a normal 2 or 3 base position where you can just flood them out at a moment's notice.
And I love this as well, how sOs send those first 4 or 5 Zealots into the main base. Like, you made a very good point. If they, have each other's back, it's going to be very hard for Zerglings to engage those Zealots. But above all, it kept the Zerglings away from that much more important pylon in the right backside of the natural. And the moment those 2 Dark Templars are warped in and there is no layer, well, that's it, man. That's all she wrote.
Yeah, we're going to be moving on to Coda for map number 2 here in the World Championship Series. It's, man, great start to the match.
Yeah.
A little bit of a cheeky aggression. Definitely wasn't expecting a 1 base versus 1 base play myself, Roddy.
I mean, sOs just seems to have very weird games on Bridgehead very often. Last time I casted him, he had a crazy game where he proxied into a proxy Stargate, also on 1 base. And that one didn't end as well as the previous game did, though.
I'm very curious to see what he decides to bust out this game, or if Rogue is going to go for another crazy build. We are just about loaded in. I hope you guys are as excited as we are here as we get closer and closer to finding out who will face off against Life in the grand finals here. The last part of the Swarm tournament we're going to see for StarCraft 2. We're loaded into Coda, and in the top left position, we have the blue Zerg player representing Jin Air Green Wings. Give it up for Rogue!
And of course, in the right bottom side of Coda, we're looking at the main base of our red Protoss play. He's one of the most solid, but also craziest Protosses out there. Give it up for sOs.
And of course, a big thanks to all of you guys coming out here. This arena is packed, Kev. So many StarCraft fans. It's been a great weekend. So much news. We got to go over all the awesome Legacy of the Void feels this morning. It's a good time to be in StarCraft.
Been a great weekend, and it's been a great year. I think this entire WCS year has been very, very entertaining. We've had so many great finals, and hopefully we'll have one more later today. But for now, of course, all eyes on the second semifinals here. Rogue again sending out a drone scout very early on. Potentially
He's not going to do anything crazy, Kev. No, surely not.
I mean, if you don't see a gateway yet, I wouldn't mind if he tries to drop the hatchery over here. And sOs seems to be quite worried about it as well. This is very annoying to deal with as a Protoss. That's why he's just pulling 2 probes immediately.
Perhaps he recognized the Nexus first in the last game and says, I'd like to punish that this game if I can.
Yep. And if you only have 1 probe there and your probe is not in the right spot and he morphs in that hatchery, you just hate life as a Protoss, because then you're like, man, I gotta start a forge somewhere, I gotta start my gateway, my Nexus is going to be incredibly late, but sOs made sure that he didn't have to deal with that.
And Rogue also started his hatchery at a very appropriate time back at his own base, so he wasn't gonna try to force that, I guess trying to see what is going to be up at the base. Important to notice whether or not Rogue will be going for a gas follow-up if he wants to do a big speedling play. It's not uncommon that you could fake your opponent out and be like, oh yeah, I'm going fast 3 hatcheries before a pool, and you think, oh, they're going economy. No, then they just use that 3rd hatchery for a little bit of extra larva, push out a lot of lings, and catch you off guard.
You know what's interesting as well? The guys at the couch mentioned it. So far, sOs has only played Protoss versus Protoss in this tournament. Rogue on the other end, he has played every single matchup already. He played a ZVT in the round of 16, played a ZVZ in the round of 8, and now he's here going up against the Protoss. Obviously quite difficult for him to prepare for every single matchup. When you're playing at this big stage, you know that your opponents are going to be very well prepared, and it's very hard to be, evenly as good in all 3 matchups. That pretty much almost never happens. Every player has a matchup they prefer and kind of dislike.
Yeah, and it's also, cool to note that Life is certainly going to be watching this match very closely, particularly if sOs is able to advance. He'll have, a good couple of games to look at. Be like, okay, well, this is sort of the opening you like. Maybe you're playing a little bit greedy this tournament. sOs may not feel comfortable doing these strategies were he to advance.
Yeah, it would be such a different series as well. Like in the last semifinals we saw Life being the crazy player out of the 2. Classic trying to go for the normal games, other than, I guess, the Dark Shrine on Iron Iron Fortress. It didn't really work out. But other than that, he's a very passive, solid Protoss, likes to just defend. Kind of old school Rain. You know, in this series on the other end, sOs is the type of Protoss that just makes it so hard for the Zerg players to figure out what they are playing against. One game is going to go 1 gate Stargate, sometimes 1 gate Twilight, sometimes, you know, it's just quick into 3 bases. There is no such thing as, you know, I know what sOs is going to do over here, because he just switches it up all the time, and it makes it very difficult for a Zerg to be ready for everything.
Yeah, interesting that Sentry gets pushed back, has to drop that force field. There's a Forge on the way inside sOs's main, but Kev, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, but is it hurt him to lose that force field that early on? Because I feel like a hallucinated Phoenix Scout would be pretty useful a minute or two now.
Yeah, it's not nice, but I don't think it's necessarily the end of the world. 2 gateways being warped in, right out of vision of this Overlord. It seemed like Rogue kind of picked up on it, but I don't think he saw it there. I think the Overlord died right before he could catch a glimpse of those 2 gateways. Yes, he didn't see it. So it's just going to be 3 gate and +1 so far. sOs can take this in so many different routes. He can go for a massive 2-base attack, but that's not what I'm expecting. I kind of expect him to just go up to 3 bases very quickly. He knows that Rogue is focusing a lot on his economy on his side of the map, even though he is bringing out a probe, Nate.
Well, if he sets himself up here, taking the forward third, is this normal on this map? Usually I see Protoss go for the bottom one next to the natural.
It's definitely not normal, but it's very interesting. I mean, if he stabilizes it, that's going to be very nice, because it's going to be very hard for Rogue to swing around. And if he ever wants to attack this base, he's going to have to go up this ramp, the ramp that the Zergling is walking up right now. This one Ling gets very close.
He's going to spot that Nexus. Very important information here for Rogue. Knowing that this base is so forward out, it's also easier for him to attack were he in a position to do so. But he doesn't have Zergling speed. He doesn't have a Ro4 yet, doesn't have his lair yet. He has, as you said, Kev, focused so much on economy. I don't know that there's a real proper way for him to punish this base.
He even went up to layer before Zergling speed, so there is a chance he can drop a very early Hydralisk then, and you know, it's going to be even shorter for the Hydralisk to make their way across the map and actually start fighting this Protoss army. Of course, force fields will be very scary and intimidating, but Hydras in general do very well against gateway units, unless, you know, the force fields are godlike and only a couple of Hydras at a time are able to shoot.
Yeah, we have these sentries being a little bit, you know, bullyish out on the map, looking for a few units to pick off here, clearing out those towers. Rogue sitting at 61 drones now as sOs starts up a few more gateways. His +1 attack is almost done. He has Blink starting up. So what are the odds that we see this turn into one of those big 2-base or 3-base Blink Stalker pushes with a lot of sentries?
I definitely think that's where sOs wants to go, but it takes time, right? It takes time to get all those things going for yourself. Rogue on the other end, he starts up Tunneling Claws. He starts up Burrow. He spots this army as well, but this is not a very terrifying army if it steps on creep. You could see, though, that Rogue is a little bit paranoid, and he kind of gives in the reputation that sOs has, as he dropped the Spore Crawler in every base, making sure he doesn't die, you know, or lose a lot of drones to an Oracle, make sure he doesn't die against Dark Templars again. And these are small things that do help out sOs, because that's going to make the push of Rogue a little bit weaker, you know, because these Spores, they will do absolutely nothing. I mean, contrary to popular belief, Spore Crawlers are not good against Blink Stalkers, Nate.
All right, I will take your word for it, Kev. Of course, you guys can let us know who you think will advance to the grand finals to play against live. Tweet the hashtag WCS with hashtag SOS or hashtag Rogue. This Zealot at the wall is getting battered down. Emergency pylon is warped in to block it off. The Zealot barely lives, Kev.
Yeah, this is going to be very interesting soon. Like, Rogue is going to squeeze out as many units as he could possibly can, most likely. But it's so risky to attack, you know, throughout the middle, because he's going to have to go up that ramp. He will have Tunneling Claws, and he does have Burrow. But at the same time, it's still very hard, because if the force fields are very good, the Hydras will be zoned out, and just Roaches are not going to cut it against gateway units and a Photon Overcharge and a cannon. So that's why maybe he's throwing down the Infestation Pit.
Yeah, Blink and +2 are both very close to finishing up. So this is where this army really starts to ramp up in power, since those force fields, Guardian Shield, phenomenal against those Hydras. The force fields, of course, can really punish any positional errors being made by the Zerg. And then those Blinks, well, they just make the sky the limit in terms of micro for the Protoss.
Yeah, I would love to see Rogue really focus a lot on spreading his creep as far away as possible, because sOs still doesn't have a robotics facility. He sometimes just doesn't make one. A couple of Stalkers getting in some trouble. These Hydras have to be careful, though. They don't have speed yet.
Yeah, very intense moment here as these Stalkers actually do give chase, pick off 1 or 2 of the Hydras. They step on the creep, but Roaches sharking over to the main base and the natural. Can sOs keep the pressure up while defending the pressure back home?
This is going to be very risky. I feel Rogue's army here is not that big, but at the same time, sOs is going to have to take care of these Roaches. And this is so annoying. He still doesn't have a robotics facility. Even if he warps in units here, if sOs babies, or excuse me, if Rogue babysits them properly, sOs can kill them.
Oh, that burrow is so frustrating in this position. The Hive is over halfway done. Hydralisk speed is about to finish up. SOS is just going to push in. That concave from the Zerg Force is so nice. Guardian Shield is popped. A lot of force fields are used. There's still a good number of them left, but maybe 1 or 2 waves of force fields from those sentries.
If Rogue defends this one time, I think he's going to be in an absolutely phenomenal position, but this is a very, very scary and intimidating army by SOS. And that Hive, I'm not sure why he's rushing up to Hive. Maybe Blinding Cloud or something, but I feel right now he just needs units, Nate.
Yeah, these first force fields are going to get thrown by the third base. That fourth is done in the northeast, but there's no drones there, so to speak of. He needs to push this third. He needs to kill drones. A few more probes going to die back home. There's the Guardian Shield. He's stepping up the ramp. Force fields these units in with the time warp as well. Mothership, of course, is going to go down, but there are the blinks. Drones coming off the mineral line. Rogue putting all of his eggs in the basket to try and defend this push, but will workers be enough? It doesn't look like it, Kev.
No, he has a lot of units on the way, but he needs all of them at the same time in the same place. Maybe these Hydras can turn his battle around, but so far the blinks are excellent.
Force fields are too good as well. Those drones getting bottled up behind the Hydras. 16 of them have fallen already. Overlords starting to die. The Hydralisks are having a really tough time doing it by themselves, Roddy.
Yep, the Roaches did kill a bunch of probes on the other side of the map, but Rogue somehow, some way, needs to stop this army, and I just think it's not going to be enough.
I mean, he even threw the Spore Crawler at him, but it's not going to be enough. GG, SOS goes up 2-0 against his teammates.
Well, very convincing so far as well. It seems like Rogue misread a little bit there of what the game plan was by SOS. I'm not sure, but going up to Hive in this situation where he actually did some pretty decent work with his Roaches, and there was still no robotics facility. So if this game would have gone on for a little bit longer, it would have been brilliant for Rogue. He just needed to stop that army one time, but he just didn't have enough units because he invested too much, in stuff like a couple Spore Crawlers, in going up to Hive, in, that infestation pit, and he didn't use any of that.
Yeah, I mean, there's also a couple of other things to keep in mind, this Burrow move play especially. We didn't really see too much Burrow used defensively, as we can very clearly see here in our Windows 10 game DVR. The push did enough damage to end the game, but Rogue still had those tools available to him that he just wasn't able to maximize the efficiency of.
I mean, we take a look at the army supply here. It's 89 against 86, but then take into consideration that there are 10, 12, or let's say 5-6 units on the other side of the map, 10, 12 supply. SOS is fighting here with more army supply than Rogue has, and he has Guardian Shield, he has Blink Stalkers, and obviously we know what Protoss players like SOS are capable of doing with Blink Stalkers.
Killing absolutely everybody, that's what Kev. And when you're in a desperate position like this, your income drops off so much. He's not able to use that worker lead because he's using his drones as a meat shield to defend. He's trying to buy time for his next wave of units, but just not enough.
There were so many units on the way. Definitely a frustrating game there for Rogue, and SOS right now in a very, very comfortable position. Being up 2-0, and when you're the type of player that SOS is, you have a little bit of freedom now, Nate. You can really switch it up. You can even take a little bit of risk. You can do something crazy, maybe save up 2 Oracles, go into Dark Shrines immediately.
So what's your preference then? If we're going to do something crazy, the next map is Iron Fortress. 4 players, so break my heart. No money gates this game, but maybe something else a little more cheeky?
Yeah, I think the way that this has been going so far, game number 1, he really needed a Spore Crawler, didn't have one. Of course, that was a very unique game. Game number 2, he made Spore Crawlers and didn't need them. So I would say this is the perfect scenario for game number 3, where you try to tuck away a Stargate in the back of your main base and then let your Oracles just
go ham. All right, well, it is going to be time to find out very shortly, of course. Like we said, 4-player map, all spawns are possible, so players will not have perfect information of where each other are going to start off. It's very important that scouting is employed to a good degree, because we could also see maybe Rogue pull off some other kind of desperation play. Maybe he doesn't feel maybe he feels defeated already.
I mean, he doesn't have to be that desperate yet. I think the best thing right now for Rogue to do is just forget about those 2 very frustrating games and just look at this. You're going up against one of the best Protoss players in the world, maybe the absolute best, but it's Iron Fortress. That is a good map for Zerg. It's very difficult for Protoss to go up to 3 bases because it's a very wide open map. So, just believe in yourself, and we saw it with Live against Classic as well. This is not a map where 3 or 4 force fields is going to be enough to push that Zerg army away, especially not when they utilize Burrow in the mix as well.
Yeah, got some SOS fans here. Some people in watching this guy win a lot of money, Roddy. I will say that the fans have really shown up here for this BlizzCon. I saw a dude dressed as a Hydralisk.
I've seen the Hydralisk as well.
It's incredible. Actually, he slithered up to me. I was like, actually, this is my nightmare right now,
Well,
as a Terran.
It was even scary for me, Nate, because I walked past it and I was like, it's a cool statue, and then it moved. I was like, ah.
That's awesome. Obviously, a lot of you guys very passionate, dedicated fans to all sorts of Blizzard games. We're very happy to have you here for the World Championship Series Global Finals as we get ready to move on into 2016 and Legacy of the Void. But this series, it's already been intense. We are loading in to Iron Fortress for our third and possibly final map of the second semifinal.
We are one map win away from having the absolute dream final here at BlizzCon 2015. Like, can you believe it, Nate? The world champ of 2013 going up against the champ of 2014 at the grand finals of the last Heart of the Swarm event. It honestly couldn't be better than that.
Yeah, it is the perfect story, but can this man change esports history in the Southeast? The blue Zerg from Jin Air Green Wings, he's Rogue! And the man who stands to go up against life to fight for the first man to be two-time world champion. Give it up for sOs!
As we are getting ready for our game on Iron Fortress, we do know that they are spawning on horizontal positions, which I think in general is a good thing for Protoss. It allows you to do some plays that are not normally possible when it's cross-map. It's a lot easier to go for strong two-base attacks, and I think Rogue is not super happy with it. It's not the end of the world, but I think this is the best-case scenario for sOs.
Yeah, this map cross spawns has usually been a position that favors the Zerg. You have such a large distance to go to put any pressure on, but this horizontal spawn, it's so nice that he knows this early as well. Can really influence the strategy that sOs chooses to go for, and likewise Rogue.
I think sOs is almost said that he scouted Rogue immediately because I think he was looking for some crazy cannons over here. We know that sOs loves his cannons in this matchup. We saw that in 2013, but even this year at multiple tournaments, DreamHack Stockholm, in the MSI as well in Seattle, he still loves to drop his cannons whenever he can. But when the probe shows up that early in the main base of a Zerg player, you have to be very crazy as a Zerg to still go hatch first when you're playing against sOs.
Yeah, Probe does a cheeky little job of trying to block that hatchery from being placed as sOs starts up his Nexus. And, pretty comfortable position, economically speaking. Both players get their expansion started at the same time, but 6 Lings, Roddy, talk to me. What does it mean?
Yeah, I kind of like that. This is just something to be annoying with, because you're going to force sOs to make a Zealot immediately, and I don't think that Zealot is going to... Oh, he's actually supply block. Wow.
Oh.
Wow, that's a really big supply block. I mean, this is just normally not something that fits in your build, right? If you're Protoss, you don't want to make the Zealot that early. If it's... if it's really necessary, you make it, but you don't want to.
Ooh, it's really important this probe sees them too. Of course, sOs wants to keep his probe alive out on the map. One Ling will get sent over to try to hunt it down, but at least now he knows he can finish his wall off and be aware that that threat is certainly there.
Yeah, but I think I guess the Zealot will be out just in time. I'm very curious to see what Rogue's going to try to achieve with his couple Zerglings over here, and if they are somehow able maybe to sneak by, but that shouldn't happen.
And Zealot's got broad shoulders, Kev, trying to block that base, but he doesn't want to step past the wall. Those Lings could run by and check how many gas geysers he's mining from. Well, Zealot is going to be forced to use it to try to fight.
Oh, and you definitely don't want to lose your pylon this early. That could also unpower the gateway, I think, if you would be able to get it in time before that second Zealot. All Lings do get in, though.
Okay, well, this gets really dicey right now. Kevin has to cancel the pylon to get the Zealot back in. There's the kill on the pylon, so no more Zealots, but the second one did finish. He can spread them between his bases and try to hunt down those Lings.
That really makes sOS's life so much easier. If you have to deal with this with only a single Zealot, it just becomes very frustrating. He does, however, have the Mothership Core on the way, and I think it's almost done.
Well, on the way, he's supply blocked for a little bit longer because of that pylon kill.
This is just very frustrating. I think he's sending his Mothership Core across the map. He wants to know if there is an extractor, if Rogue is mining gas. Does he have to worry about a crazy amount of speedlings, something we saw live do multiple times? Or is this just a macro-oriented opening for Rogue, where he's just trying to be very, very annoying with his Zerglings?
And that Zealot did get sent straight away across. Now, this Queen is off creep. She's helpless, cannot defend herself. That without the creep, she moves too slow to run away. So the Zealot gets a nice kill. Big pickup, actually, denying the first inject on that hatchery and possibly a creep tumor or two. But those Lings still being equally annoying on the other side of the map.
Yep. But I do think it's very important there. Picking up that queen, that's going to make his life a lot easier. It's going to make it a lot harder for Rogue to spread creep. And we saw that in the previous series. The more creep, the better, especially because sOs is the type of Protoss that often delays his robotic facility. So picking up a queen in this phase in the game is a pretty damn big deal. And he starts working on that hatch. He should never be able to kill it. But this is very frustrating for Rogue.
Yeah, I mean, just think about in the long run, this hatchery now is a big target for sOs to snipe later on. It's already lost half of its hit points. Any gateway push could possibly kill it and just recall out later.
3 more gateways are on their way, but sOs does actually have a probe, I believe, on the top side of the map, right? That's 4 gateways,
boy.
Nate.
Yeah, he's going way up. This is going to be a really big push. Another gateway gets added, 6 total. Oh boy.
And Zergling's speed is not even ready yet. If this probe somehow, some way finds that, or that Zergling finds the probe, that would be massive. But
7 gateways now.
This is going to be extremely difficult for Rogue to defend.
He's starting spores. He's going to be like last game, man. He's going to be walking his spores into the other armies saying, please be useful.
He's in a lot of trouble, Nate. Defending this without Zergling speed is extremely difficult. He will spot those units, but I love how sOs was sending a probe towards the third base as well, giving his opponent the idea. He's like, don't worry, man, I'm going up to 3 bases as well, Rogue. He's not. He's 7-gating you, and you need literally everything you have right now to somehow defend this.
And this is going to be very difficult for Rogue to stop. And, you know, this has to be everything. If he loses this fight, if he loses this base, he loses the match and his chance at finally becoming a world champion in StarCraft 2. The spores are put forward. They're going to help push the Mothership core back. It's something, but the first warriors are going to get dropped. The Lings do not have speed walking up to these sentries. One of them does get picked off, but the Queens are all isolated, and those warp gates are finishing up, Roddy.
Yep, 30 Zerglings are on the way, but more and more Zealots will be warped in for sOs, and this is really not good for Rogue. His Roach Ward was so late. You need Roaches against the Zealots, because by the time he has the Lings now, he needs something else, and it's going to take so long before those Roaches are here.
Yeah, these Zealots are a great deterrent to these very slow Zerglings. The Queens, very low on health as well. They can't fight back. Time Warp's going to slow down the reinforcements. The Zealots get on top of all of the Zerglings. The Stalkers beautifully tucked between these forces, and everything is just dying, falling apart for Rogue here in the second semifinal of the World Championship Series. More Stalkers coming in. The next warp in is Zealots. He's got a pylon right on top of that rift. There's nothing here for Rogue to fight back with.
He has nothing left, Nate. All the Zerglings died before the Roaches arrived, and that's just not the way to stop a 7-gate. It was going to be very hard regardless, but sOs, he just didn't make any mistakes, and he's in a phenomenal position right now. He can end it, he can go back, he can literally do whatever he wants. This is sOs's playing field.
sOs is going to make one last push to secure himself a shot against life to fight for his second world champion title. Into the natural, up come the drones. There's nothing Rogue can do. He's pushing it. There's the time warp. There's the force field. Everything desperately trying to hold this push for one last chance, for one last breath to fight here in the global finals. But it doesn't look like it's going to be enough. Every last unit falling. The spine crawlers dying. GG! sOs will go to the grand finals.
3-0 over his teammate, man. This guy, he looks unstoppable as well. What an amazing finals we have ahead of us. I can't believe it. This is like the perfect final for us as StarCraft fans, seeing the 2 previous world champs go up against each other. He was phenomenal in this series, Nate. He didn't even make it look close.
Could not ask for a better finals cap. I can't wait to hear what sOs has to say about that match.
sOs moves on to the final, ladies and gentlemen. Another player now in the final, going for his second title. And sOs, I mean, no matter which tournament, what game, you just always find something to do, whether it's tricking your opponent out, whether it's being creative, or whether it's overcoming extreme odds. How does that work for you? I mean, are you just super calm, or are you just super smart, or maybe a combination of both, and that just makes life unfair? What is it? 저희 김유진 선수는 어느 대회에서든지 경기력이 좋을 때를 보면 뭐 전략도 좀 유니크한 전략도 준비해 오시고, 또 지고 있는 상황에서도 한 5초 또 보고 있다 보면 갑자기 이기고 계시고, 그런데 뭐 정말 그냥 침착해서 경기력이 그렇게 좋다고 생각하세요? 아니면 그냥 뭐 그만큼 똑똑하고 경기를 잘 치르기 때문에 그렇게 잘 되는 것 같다, 그렇게 생각하세요?
우선 큰 무대다 보니까 서로 이까지 오면 둘 다 잘하는 선수이기 때문에 최대한 긴장 안 하는 사람이 이긴다고 생각하고 최대한 침착하게 하려고 노력했어요.
When it's a big stage like this and you're in the round of 4, when you're at the semifinals or even the finals, you have to admit that any player who gets there is really, really good. So at that point, yeah, it is going to be the player who's a little bit more calm who's going to take the win. I think I was at that point. Now, of course, you had to play against your teammate, Rogue. And while you are the victor, standing here in the spotlight, I mean, what's it like to look at Rogue in the semifinals? I mean, within the team, you guys must have had some talks where Rogue, like, when is Rogue going to kind of get his breakthrough on such a big stage? 그리고 이제 물론 김유진 선수가 승자지만 제 이병렬 선수도 정말 올해 좀 힘겹게 드디어 이제 4강까지 올라오고 이런 큰 무대에서 그런 걸 봤을 때 뭐 뿌듯하다든지 팀원으로서 그런 생각이 있으신가요?
병렬이도 이번 15년부터는 엄청 잘해가지고 4강에서 만났을 때도 쉽지 않은 경기가 될 거라 예상했는데 제가 심리전에서 우위를 점해서 쉽게 이겼던 것 같아요.
Yeah, you know, I got to give it to Rogue. He started really performing this year in 2015, and when I saw him on that other side of the bracket against me in the semifinals, I thought this isn't going to be an easy match. Of course, I did win 3-0, and at that point, I think it's just my mind games. I think I just won out in that preparedness. I'm able to take the win. Last but not least, Life said, your side of the bracket, easy peasy, no matter who comes up, it's no match compared to who he had to play to come to the finals. What do you have to say about that? 그럼 마지막으로 저희 반대쪽에서는 뭐 김유진 선수든 이병렬 선수든 이쪽은 너무 쉽게 결승까지 올라왔기 때문에 상관이 없다 그런 말이 나왔었는데 어떻게 생각하세요?
대진이 어떻든 상관없이 우승만 하면 되는 것 같아요.
It doesn't matter what bracket you have to get through. If you're the one picking up that trophy, you've got nothing left to say. Ladies and gentlemen, SOS moves on to the grand final.
I'm so happy. I mean, okay, congrats to Rogue for making it so far. SOS versus Life. Oh my God. Honestly, SOS showed exactly why he is championship caliber player in that series. I mean, let's actually start in game number 1. That defense of that backdoor hatchery strat was just astounding.
It's a little bit of a throwback. We used to actually, that was half our job as analysts, is every time Bridgehead came up, we had to be like, now remember, it's super in fashion right now to drop a hatch in that back and spine crawler push. But then all the Zergs stopped doing it for a while because Protoss has kind of figured it out and became pretty good about defending against that. And SOS had to reach back in his old bag of tricks there and come up with that defense. But to your point, to do that defense with so much on the line on this stage against such a great opponent like Rogue, that's what's really special about it for me. When the weird stuff comes out, it's like, okay, what's your crisis control like? Where are your nerves at? SOS received and was okay with it.
I'm not really a big fan of the strategy Rogue went for, though, because Life forces mistakes, right? But they're highly mechanical mistakes in situations he forces, while this attack actually comes out pretty slowly. And that can give SOS, who's a calm player, a lot of time to collect his thoughts and figure out his defense perfectly. So Pritchard is very tempting, but I think it was just the wrong choice of build.
I like what Kevin said too during the broadcast. I actually think if you look at this and you're like, hey, wait a second, he's on one base, he's made 4 cannons to defend against this. I think you start cutting your ties and like, I'm not going to keep pushing for the offense, maybe transition out of this and try to use that to your advantage. But I mean, maybe he would or would not have been ready for those DTs that came anyways.
The thing I love most that we're seeing through, all these games in the Windows 10 game DVR, the ways in which SOS is winning are so different. I mean, in that early hold, quickly teching to Dark Templar and then going mass Blink Stalker, the identification that this push could be a potential weakness, this is what makes SOS so terrifying. He's almost like a Protoss version of Life, that at virtually any point, he'll judge, oh yeah, actually, I think I can just win here. And then he just blasts right in and continues to punish his opponents.
Isn't that the thought of any Protoss, though? Just that switch you have in the head, now I can go. I mean, you try to just find that switchless Protoss. And
for me, it's just saying cannon rush over and over again, and I can't get that damn voice to shut up, but it's, yeah, I'll let you know if I get past that.
It took me years to get that voice of yours out of my head as well after you hit a pylon in my base and cannon rushed me at MLG.
Back when you were a Terran player, I remember those days. They were good times.
You used to play Terran.
I used to play random as well. And also, I like
Okay.
Kilo so much better when he was a Terran player.
Your random streak was like a week and a half. It was.
No, I played throughout the whole beta, and then I switched to Terran because I randomed Protoss 3 times in a row against Hydra and had to lose PvP 3 times in a row, and then I decided
That'll do
random is not fun
Well,
anymore.
let me tell you, I play the real skill matchup, 3v3 and 4v4, sometimes mono battles, and I always choose Tempest these days.
Excellent choice.
Now, at this point in time, it's Life versus SOS in the finals. You know, taking a look at the bracket, we have so many mechanically gifted players that are gone. I mean, what do you feel about the finals, Maynard?
Well, I mean, you brought it up already. It's like the Life Protoss against Life himself. We're going to have a very, very like aggression versus aggression game.
Maynard,
It's the perfect final that
let
could
me
possibly
put
happen.
this into focus for you. If Life was an animal from Australia and SOS was an animal from Australia, what would they be? And don't say drop bears because I recently found out they're not real.
Recently?
Don't. They are
me a
real.
year.
It's a very serious issue. 500,000 Australians die per year from drop bears. But moving on, we're talking about StarCraft. We're at BlizzCon. Focus, please, Jeff.
I'm
Okay,
trying.
we got to. I would have to say that they are two very giant bird-eating spiders attacking each other.
Okay. What
Very
do you guys call
similar
those?
animals.
Are they just called blimies?
I think they're just called spiders in Australia.
Yeah, they're called house spiders.
Yeah. That's right. I call them nightmares.
Well, I mean, like, I think you couldn't have said it better that SOS is like the life of Protoss.
Well, actually, I think someone else said that.
Didn't you say that?
Did you say that?
Did I
Are you
say
just
that?
agreeing with yourself?
Great point.
I was just agreeing.
I think
I don't want to
wow.
take credit for that, man.
Let me tell you something
let's
I
just
said
call
that
it
I
even.
really
I
agree
said
with.
it. Let's just cut it right down the middle. I did it.
And in the same way, Life is like the SOS of Zerg.
I said
Thoughts,
that too.
Jeff?
Well, I mean, I said that, so I'd
Yeah.
really rather throw it to Daria.
Well, I'd have to disagree, obviously. I don't think you can compare their playstyles because one of them is a Zerg and the other is a Protoss.
But that is the most Dario thing you could say right there.
The thing that excites me so much about this final match is, you know, when you look at any bracket, there's a number of storylines that sort of stand out to you. Obviously, Rogue is the underdog story. That's, just a classic in a tournament. But here, they're each one win away from a second championship. That is so difficult to do.
Oh, it's so awesome.
Right now, with Life against SOS, it's a
Did you
best
eat a
of
fly?
seven final. I was this close to sneezing, Jeff, and I didn't know what to do. The brackets came up, and I just covered my mic and hoped it would. I managed to get it out, but that's okay. I stifled it down. This is the first best of 7 that we will have in this entire tournament.
And I like your comment earlier too, where we've seen a lot of similarities between the two players. Very aggressive early game, but with the best of 7, you almost kind of have to change up the beast even more because there is time even inside of that best of 7 to kind of calibrate for your opponent. Be like, okay, I can see what you're doing, but also notably, it is a 7-map map pool. So if it goes the distance, we are literally going to see Dash Terminal for the second time in BlizzCon. It's gonna be glorious.
But if it does go to Game 7, that's going to be the first time that SOS has lost this entire weekend. That's a lot of winning.
Well, I mean, that goes for both players, right?
It's a single elimination.
No, I mean, SOS has
Oh,
not
yeah,
lost
lost
a
a map.
map.
Yeah,
he
that is true.
3-0, 3-0.
Did he?
Yeah. Went 3-0 against Rain and then 3-0 just now against Rogue.
Dang, so he hasn't even seen a loss screen yet.
Yeah, he doesn't even know what that looks like.
Do
And
you
it's
think that's
gorgeous
going to be
in
an
Legacy of
issue?
Void.
If he sees the lost screen, is he going to be confused?
What's happening? I think he'll use his creativity to break through it. So at this point, the players are going to get set up. And when we return, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the grand finals. It's time to find a champion for this year's Global Finals.